You're listening to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/AceCast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation.
Yes, lads, UFC Fighter Jack Show here. You can catch me on the latest episode of A.C.E Podcast Nation. Make sure to give them a subscribe on YouTube. It's youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation, and looking forward to get back on there soon.
Defending champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 75 and tonight we have got lots to talk about. There's obviously the boxing from last night. We've also got UFC from Saturday night. We've got Bellator from Friday night. And of course another top guest from the fight world, which we're very excited to talk to. So we got lots and lots to get into, so we'll get into it nice and quick. But if you like your podcasts in video format, you can go watch this and all the other shows we do. We do lots of different shows and different subjects, featuring top guests, expert analysts, and more. Subscribe to youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation. Follow us on social media. And of course, if you prefer your audio podcasts, we do all those shows in audio form, just whether it's Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, wherever you prefer your podcasts. Just search A.C.E Podcast Nation, and there's over 400 shows on different subjects, featuring different people, different guests, different hosts. But joining me, as ever, first and foremost, we have ex-Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend, Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
All right, so Decky, yeah, I'm really good. And geez, what a weekend! I mean, we're just getting spoiled time and time again. But we've got this new promotion, PFL, that was on, Bellator, UFC, and what with boxing as well. We've been really treated to something spectacular this weekend.
Yeah, it's been an incredible weekend, and I think I'm gonna have to get you like a little video intro saying Danny Batten's PFL weekly update, because I just haven't got the time to watch it. Like, I just got doing so many podcasts, and then obviously we watch so much fights, and Bellator is back up and running properly now, so there's a lot to talk about. And then obviously we had a big boxing fight, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But before that, let's introduce our guest. He is Cage Warriors lightweight, and I should have checked before to work out how to pronounce his name, because I am terrible with names, but it is Decky Mcaleenan. How are you? Did I pronounce your name right?
Mcaleenan.
Mcaleenan. There we go.
No, you didn't, sire. It's basically the answer. Butchered it. I even got a note on my screen saying, check how you pronounce his name. Sorry, mate. It's
all right.
It's nothing personal, mate. Me and Danny butcher fighters' names on a weekly basis. It's just lucky it's not like a Russian name or an Eastern European name, or it could have got really embarrassing. Like,
not even trying name names, really.
Yeah, well, we end up calling them by first name most of the time.
Yeah.
Give them a nickname. How are you, mate? Anyway, you alright?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just back from the zoo with the child.
Nice. I suppose it's nice. At least the zoos are bloody open and stuff. Everything's opening up back now, so it's a little bit more bearable, just about. Like, but I bet it must have been difficult. Like the last 18 months, I have been asking all the fighters and coaches which we have on. But what's it been like for you? Sort of last 18 months as a fighter and as a dad, I suppose.
Yeah, well, the child, she is only 18 months old, so I think she was 7 weeks old when we went into lockdown. So it's kind of been, as a dad, it's been great. It's time that you would have never got to spend with her, especially being a fighter. You know what it's like. You don't really, you're away from home a lot, like early mornings and late nights. So as a dad, it's been great getting used and getting time to see, getting used to having a child, and then getting time to spend with her has made going back to fighting that wee bit easier, because I was able to get some sort of structure with her, and then with the gyms and everything being closed, just doing my own wee bits of training. Then by the time they opened, I was used to having to train and having to look after the child.
Yeah, that's a positive side to it, actually, isn't it? Because like you say, I think it's similar with whatever you do, whether you're a fighter or not, like all professions. But like as a dad, you do tend to miss out on a lot in that. Like you have your 2 weeks off or whatever normally, and then you're back to work, back to fighting, back to training, whatever it may be. So like you've been quite fortunate with that. You've got to probably spend a lot more time with her than what you would have otherwise.
I went on a maternity leave as well, so I did.
There you go. Proper. What about like the training? Were you just doing like little bits here and there, is it? And then sort of waiting for the gyms and everything to reopen properly?
Initially, at the start, whenever COVID was a thing that you were sort of afraid of a little bit, I just done my own training. I done the runs in the morning, bag work straight after, and then just sort of chilled out the rest of the day. Maybe done a wee bit of like footwork and stuff on the ladder out the back, and a few weights and that. And then as things started to ease up, I had one or two boys that were taking the lockdown pretty serious as well, who we all sort of came to an agreement, right, we'll meet up and we'll grapple, but we're not, like this isn't a thing that we're all like sort of taking the lockdowns lightly. It's just sort of, you're not leaving the house and I'm not leaving the house, surely we're safe to train with each other. Like,
yeah. Creating your own bubble, isn't it?
Yeah, that's before a bubble was kind of a thing. Like, John, whenever everyone was of everything sort of. So we had maybe, I think in total there was 3 of us all just trained together, and that left whenever we came out of lockdown. I think I had 10 weeks in to get ready for my first fight, or 5 weeks. So it was all good.
Spot on, mate. Right, well, I want to talk. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about you, and I want to talk about your start in MMA and where your aims and stuff are now. But just before we do that, I don't want to leave the boxing out, Danny, this week, because we have been. I've had a few messages of late saying we don't spend enough time talking about boxing. So, other than we've mentioned and probably slated the Jake Paul stuff a little bit. So there was a big fight on last night, which was Billie Joe Saunders taking on Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez obviously is the guy. He's collecting belts for fun. But Danny, what did you make of the fight overall? And did Billie Joe Saunders, before it was stopped due to his broken orbital bone or eye socket, did you think he did better than what you expected?
Yeah, I actually did think he did better. In the first couple of rounds, I was thinking, okay, we've got a pattern here that's just going to repeat until the end of the fight, sort of thing. With Canelo pressing forward, it almost made Saunders look a little uncomfortable at times. And I wasn't too sure whether Saunders would be able to figure out a way to get back on track. But Saunders is really quite creative, and he started creating the space that he needed to get that jab going, and then started coming in off that jab as well. Canelo started trying to force that close range. He had success within the first 2 rounds. He started catching Canelo with like a body shot, then a head shot, and he was looking like the tide was almost turning. But of course, just as Saunders seemed to be getting his groove, so to speak, and try and put it on Canelo to try and figure out something new and change the rhythm of the fight. The orbital situation happened with his eye, didn't it? It's just a shame that he just couldn't have carried on. But Canelo was looking for power shots, and he was landing them. And at the end of the day, that's what led it to the stoppage. I wouldn't be surprised if this fight gets run back again at some point, either from the get-go or in the very, very near future. Anyway, I think it could get run by again. I think Saunders surprised a lot of people, to be honest. I think we all wrote him off to be walked over by Canelo, but it wasn't the case.
Yeah, I thought the first couple of rounds, Alvarez looked sharp and looked good and looked like it was going to be the usual. But then I thought what Billie Joe Saunders did very well was he created these weird angles, which it's something we've talked about with people like Conor McGregor and people like that. They create these weird angles which fighters find it difficult to perhaps find their distance and find their mark enough. But what Canelo Alvarez did when he caught him with that shot, which ultimately finished the fight, is as Billie Joe Saunders was sort of crouching down to create that weird angle, he leant into the shot. And, Canelo Alvarez is... the power which he possesses is unbelievable. Like, it was like a gun going off, that shot which broke his orbital bone. So in terms of the rematch, and I'm going to ask Decky the same sort of thing now, but do you think two of the reasons maybe why we don't see the rematch is, one, Billie Joe Saunders hasn't got anything which Canelo Alvarez wants now. I believe, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's one more belt which Alvarez is after, which, and I just feel like at the age which Alvarez is at, I think he's only interested now in kind of cementing his legacy and collecting those belts. I just don't see him wanting to run. There's no benefit to him running that back. Like, he beat him, he stopped him. It is what it is. I don't know what you think about that, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably right. I mean,
Like,
Canelo.
Just to add to that, sorry, mate. Boxing's a different beast to MMA in terms of, and even Eddie Hearn said that this week. He said, like, in MMA, the best fight the best, and if you have a close fight, they'll do a rematch. But in boxing, it is slightly different, and I'm just not sure that they'll run that back from that point.
You're exactly right. It seems like the boxers, when they're on top of their game and on top of their careers, like Canelo is, they seem to be in the driving seat of who they get, when they get it, and at what price they want. And Canelo is totally in that position. So if he doesn't want Saunders for whatever reason, and for the reasons that maybe you put forward, in that he's got nothing to offer him anymore, you could be exactly right. He might just want to pick up this remaining belt and cement his legacy. You're exactly right. Which, to me, I think that is a shame. That is a frustration with boxing. I think boxing, we need to see the greats face each other more often, and sometimes the greats fight more than once. But that seems to be times gone by in boxing.
Decky, what did you make of the fight, and what did you make of Billie Joe Saunders' performance as well up to the stoppage?
I thought it was a great back and forward sort of fight, but throughout the whole thing, it just looked like Canelo was just slowly but surely chipping away. You were just sort of waiting for, from my eyes watching it, I was just waiting for Canelo to get some sort of finish. Personally, I think defensively and offensively, he's one of the best boxers that have done it. And that's why I don't watch much boxing, but he's one of the main ones that I watch, is because he's not just a defensive boxer. He's so good at it, and he's so good at making you look stupid, but he's also got the power then to put you away. And just watching throughout the fight, I thought it was going to get stopped at some stage. I thought maybe a body shot. He seemed to be throwing, it was like an uppercut into the body.
Yeah.
Backhand. He seemed to be touching with it a lot. And I was expecting that maybe to be one of the finishers. I didn't think that it was going to be the lead hook, the wreck his eye.
Yeah, he kind of lent into it as well, didn't he? And I think you're right about the body shots, because like we've been talking about, we've seen a few really big body shots in MMA over the last couple of weeks as well, which have finished fights. And I think the power which Alvarez has got, that's the sort of punch which would have probably, or could have, contributed to the finish, certainly. And I think look, I thought Billie Joe Saunders did better than I expected him to. Ultimately, Canelo Alvarez is one of the best ever, like you say. So it's
his stock hasn't went down any. Like, he hasn't went in and got mauled by him, So
no.
I don't think the fight will ever happen again. Personally, just with that fair boxing is, but it would be great to see a rematch. But I don't really think it will happen. Like,
the other thing I wanted to ask you kind of both about, but I'll ask you, Decky, first as the sort of current fighter. So obviously Billie Joe Saunders got a broken orbital bone, I think it was reported. I think I'm right in saying that was what ended Kell Brook's career, because of the complications in returning to it. Obviously, as a fighter, part of your training is getting hit. So it's a difficult injury to overcome. Like, is that going to make it difficult, do you think, for Billie Joe Saunders to make a return at the very top level? I'm going to check how old he is, but like it's obviously a brutal injury, isn't it?
It's not a nice injury, no, but it's hard to know how bad. I haven't seen actually the reports on how bad his eye is. I know from training with Team Alpha Male, Sage Norcott, he got his near enough his face broke in one FC. His orbital was shattered and had to be reconstructed, but he's back training, getting ready to fight.
Okay.
Not sure if he's fought since, but it's hard to. Boxing's a different sport than MMA. There's a lot of ways to win, a lot of ways to stall out a fight in MMA. Sorry, with boxing, you're going to get repeatedly on that spot. Like, so it's a hard one to call. It's not a nice place to be for Billie Joe at the minute. Like, you know.
Yeah, 100%. He so Eddie Hearn said overnight, or this evening actually, looking at the dates, 10 to 6 tonight. Billie Joe Saunders stayed in the hospital overnight. He suffered multiple fractures to the orbital area and is having surgery this afternoon, which sounds brutal. I got to be honest. That sounds like it's going to be it's going to be difficult, isn't it? Look, it is what it is. It's one of those injuries where until they probably do the surgery and stuff like that, it's going to be, there's going to be, I would imagine, it's going to be touch and go, Dan, isn't it? Because it's just one of those injuries, and I would imagine, and I'm no doctor and I'm not a fighter, but I would imagine that a lot will depend on if his sight is affected. Like, I know, Michael Bisping fought with one eye, but that was largely because he kept it to himself. It's a difficult injury. Billie Joe Saunders, he's only he is 31. He's in his prime as a fighter. Hopefully he can come back for it. But it's a nasty injury, Dan.
Yeah. It's really hard to predict how boxers choose to do things. Boxers can and do often go on for what seems to be too long. I think at times, many times, they can't seem to put the gloves down and keep them down.
Don't start me on them now.
So
these fights.
Yeah, I think he's going to be out for a long time. I think if we could possibly not see anything of him for another 2 years, I think that's the reality of what situation he's in. To be honest, you got to think that best part of 12 months are going to be out of the equation. He's going to have to get himself back in shape. There's going to be all sorts of things, and that depends on how bad this really is. Look, he's having surgery. How bad is this eye? Really, I think we have to sort of sit and wait on the real outcome of how serious this situation is for him. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see him get back in there. But to what kind of performance level, who only knows? I mean, is he going to get warm-up fights coming back in? And there's so many things to weigh up. I just don't know. It's one of those things we just have to wait and see and let it play out.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect I just wanted to touch on before we move on was I was pleased to see his trainers, his corner looking after him, because it was clear he was in a great deal of pain, but also he couldn't see out of it, and I think they did the responsible thing. They looked after their fighter. It doesn't matter how big the fight is, if you've got to put your fighter's health first. And we've seen plenty of interesting or questionable things within boxing over the last couple of months, in and outside the ring, and I just felt like that was something which should be noted, that no matter how big the fight is, the trainers, the corner, should always have the best interest of their fighters. Even if that does mean, saying, right, no, you're not going back in, which is what happened. I don't know what you guys think about that. Like, Danny, what do you think about that? It's difficult, isn't it? Because the fighter's always going to want to go back in. But
yeah, well, maybe not all the case, but if the fighter chooses not to, it's pretty damn hard to try and persuade them to get in there if they don't want to be there at the end of the day. I think as soon as a fighter says he don't want to be in there, that's, to me, game over.
But
that's not a mentality to have.
Say again.
Sorry, Decky.
At that stage, as soon as a fighter tells you he doesn't want to be in, I think that's your career over. It's not just...
Yeah.
But I personally, I think it's your coaches and cornerman job to save you from yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as you hear people talking about quitting and different things, you get up off a stool to fight someone like Canelo with a broken eye socket, and we'll see. Then you can comment on.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah, 100%. And I saw
Yeah, I agree.
some people on social media, as you do, calling him a quitter, and even Chris Eubank Jr. was criticising him quite publicly, which they've got an ongoing spat, I know. But I was just like, he didn't. Number one, he didn't quit. Number two, he didn't. He didn't go out there and embarrass himself or anything like that. He was beaten by a fighter, and let's be honest, a fighter who's beaten everybody else. So it is where it is. We're on boxing, so I'm going to bring it up very quickly. Have you seen the Floyd Mayweather, Logan Paul, Jake Paul scuffle? Danny, have you seen it?
I saw that part of it. I didn't see the whole thing, but I had someone show me it, and I don't know. It's creating attention again, and that's what it seems to be about with those brothers. And what can I say?
What I saw an interview with Eddie Hearn, which I obviously just referred to, and he said people think that Logan Paul and Jake Paul, they think they're stupid. He said they know how to promote themselves. They know how to create things in media and stuff like that. They're quite intelligent. He didn't really say anything about his boxing ability. He just said they know what they're doing. And I just think, I'll ask you, Decky, do you think that the Mayweather thing was do you think it was a setup? Do you think he did legitimately piss Mayweather off? Or do you think it was just purely because no one was really too bothered about Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather as a fight, and now suddenly people are interested?
To be honest, I didn't even know the two of them were fighting. I didn't know how the scuffle came about. I thought it was hilarious whenever he stole his hat. Like, I have no interest in it. That bit alone was funny, I thought.
Yeah.
But, I didn't actually, and whenever I seen the other brother squaring off with him, I didn't even know that was happening.
Yeah.
It would be, it's surprising, because I was listening to something today that McGregor wasn't able to annoy him, and he can get under people's skin.
Yeah.
And within a couple of minutes of them two brothers
being around them,
they seem to have pissed him off. But you can see with the likes of Conor, he is you have to have some sort of respect for him. With them two boys are two Egypts, they can get under your skin, that sort of way.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is as well. There's the other aspect to it is a fight with Conor McGregor sells itself, doesn't it? People are interested in it. There's no way you wouldn't have known about McGregor fighting Mayweather, whereas you didn't really know about Logan Paul fighting Floyd Mayweather. And I just think, and also there's I saw a load of clips of Floyd Mayweather and Jake Paul together from a couple of years ago, so they obviously could know each other to some sort of degree. So I was I don't know. It was quite funny though, I gotta say. But it was funny because Floyd Mayweather, when he sort of found him backstage or whatever, he was like, I can kill him and that. And then he's got these massive bodyguards with him, 6 of them, and they're all kind of laying into Jake Paul whilst holding Floyd Mayweather back. And I was just like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's enough of that. It's, I just want to see... If Jake Paul's going to continue fighting, then put him in against someone who can strike. If it's going to be an MMA guy, just put him in. Anyone.
It seemed they were talking about Tyson Fury's brother.
Tommy, is it?
Yeah, they put him in with someone like him, or don't put him in with a wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
What about?
Or even put it for talk's sake. There's Adesanya. He's about the same weight, with the same size, and can fight. Stick the two of them in together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
In a kickboxing match though, just for shits and giggles. But but to me, I just think maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. I just think Tommy Fury, someone who's been boxing the majority of his life, you put him in against someone like Jake Paul, he's going to annihilate him. Like, that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm doing him a disservice because he's clearly a better fighter than perhaps some people thought. But to me, I just think if you put him in someone who's boxed to a decent level for a long time, I would think would be able to destroy him. And like Tommy Fury, like he's not old. He's in the prime of his career or whatever. I don't know.
But the
I just
boys
want to.
call themselves boxers. Don't like they're going around. They're
embarrassing them. The sport, I think.
So stick them in with a boxer.
Yes.
Or if they're going to challenge fighters, challenge them to a fight. Then have an MMA fight.
Yeah.
Like you can't be calling yourself a fighter and having a boxing match. Like you can't be. You also can't be calling wrestlers out for a boxing match. If you want to be a boxer, fight a boxer. If you want to be if you want to be a fighter, and you want to like, no disrespect, I'm not saying that boxers aren't fighters. It's a cruel sport, but there's ways of getting around rules and stuff. Like if that had have been an MMA fight with Jake Paul and Ben Askren, it would have been probably even quicker again in the opposite direction. So just let them fight a boxer, and then that'll get rid of them. And that'll be the end of that.
Yeah. And that's it. I think he's 3-0, but he hasn't fought a boxer yet, and it's like, come on. But then I guess it's the same reason why there was always rumours that Floyd Mayweather was going to fight Conor McGregor in MMA, but that was never going to happen, never in a million years, because it would have been over in a minute, and that does a lot more damage to Floyd Mayweather's legacy, whatever you want to call it, than going whatever he did. What was it, 10 rounds or 9 rounds or whatever it was with Conor? It's just a different animal altogether. But yeah, I think I said something similar a couple of weeks ago, Decky. Put him in with a boxer or shut up, basically. Right. So let's switch to you, Decky. Let's talk about you a little bit. How old were you when you got into fighting?
Mixed martial arts,
just generally like martial arts and that sort of interest.
8.
Where did you start? 8. Did you start like with a particular sort of martial art, or were you sort of karate? Yeah.
Yeah, started with it. At the time it was maybe 12 or 13. I won my first All Ireland and was on the national karate team, and sort of travelled the world for a couple of years representing my country.
Nice.
And then got to Japan whenever I was 18, and the cheating involved in karate, see the politics and biasness involved in karate is ridiculous.
Is that right?
Big time. So
in what way?
A lot of the times the people that win the competition, it depends what sort of badge is on your chest and what coming from. Money talks in every sport, and unfortunately the Irish karate team didn't really have much money. So like my first ever trip representing my country, I had to buy me Irish tracks. But anyway, I qualified and went over to Japan for the World Championships, and was in as one of the sort of higher up boys in the division that would have been sort of touted to win it. And every weight group you were allowed 2 per country in it, and nearly every final was 2 Japanese. So whenever you're fighting in their country, doing their sport against with a panel of their judges, you're not really going to win. And just the build up of things left me then to go. Whenever I came home from that, I wanted to look into something else. So I played a bit with boxing, as every Irish lad has, and then I was debating whether or not to try and find somewhere to do MMA or go to boxing, and then MMA just happened to fall at the door.
Was there like particular influences on you, like which swayed you that way? Like anyone you looked up to or anything like that, or fighters that you admired or something?
No. Whenever I was younger, I was a wee bit of a rocket head. Thought he could have beat anyone, so I didn't really look up to anybody at that stage. But it's only then I got into the sport and realised that there's a lot more to it. Like my first sparring session for MMA sparring session, I'll never forget it because I couldn't walk for about a week after. Uh, with the karate, I was able to kick one of the boys in the head, and I was stuck in a boxing ring and didn't know how to check leg kicks, and he made me pay for that head kick. So I quickly learned that I wasn't the man,
Yeah.
and had to learn how to fight properly. So I just stuck with it. There was one of my mates, got a fella I was working with, came in with an old cauliflower ear, and so what happened to him, I was talking away, and he told me what he was doing. And then that sort of got me, that was sort of my foot in the door to join the sort of local MMA team.
Awesome. I love those stories though, like, because I asked a similar question to all the fighters or the coaches we have on. I've asked Danny before and stuff, like, because everyone's got a different kind of start into their fighting career or how they got into it. So you said like you're a bit of a, what did you say, a rocket head? So I'm assuming that's like an Irish term, but like, were you a hothead as well as that? Like you were clearly confident that you thought you could win a fight. Were you quite a hothead when you were younger, or were you
Not
just
a hothead,
confident in your own ability? Like,
not a hothead, just growing up, coming from a wee estate where I came from, sort of fighting was an everyday thing. Like sort of between playing Gaelic football, and clubs fighting, or just going out at the weekend at teenage discos, and there would have been three main places where I'm from. The town that I'm from, a place called Crossbridge, a place called Dundalk, and there would have just been weekly fights between them whenever we were out, just happening never off that weekend. So it would have, like, getting into trouble on the street would have been the normal for us, like.
yeah.
As well as like training and fighting competitively. It's just something that I enjoy doing. So, like, as I said, I did get myself into a brave bit of trouble growing up, but a lot of people thought I would grow out of the sport of fight, or sorry, a lot of people thought I would grow out of fighting instead of actually growing into the sport of fighting. Like,
You mentioned Gaelic football, mate. I got to ask you, but I've heard that is absolutely fucking brutal. I've heard that it's so hard on the body, it's unreal. What's it like?
it's just football to us, really. Like,
Yeah.
it's just that you've been playing from your. I think I started playing maybe under 10s or under 12s, and played at a high level. We've won sort of in the school team. We've won the other championships, which was as far as we could go, and then for the club, played right up until under 18s, and then just sort of, there was never no injuries playing football, never not. You did get the head, got a few slaps, but it wasn't too bad. It's nothing compared to her. That's the man's sport.
Sorts the men from the boys.
Yeah.
They so it sounds like you were pretty good at like a few different sports, though, mate, as well. Like you said, they straight away, like you were traveling the world doing karate. You won tournaments playing Gaelic football. Was there ever a time where you might have pursued like a different sport as a career, or did you think by the time that choice came around, it was always going to be fighting?
It sort of picked itself for me, so it did. As I said, with having to change from karate to mixed martial arts, was down to the fact of that other people can sway who wins a fight. In mixed martial arts, compared to boxing, there's so many more ways to win a fight that it's up to you not to let it go to the judge's decision. With karate, because it was semi-contact, you had to always rely on a judge or a referee to give you a point to see who wins. With Gaelic football, you were relying on the boys not to go on the drink. We played football on a Monday night, and the boys would go on the drink on a Sunday. So we had a good team up until under 18s, and then at that stage, the team just went to shite because the boys went out again. And they stayed in school. I left school early and was working at this stage, right in the time to go out. I had to get up early on Monday morning to go to work. They didn't. They could go on the drink. So whenever we started losing matches because the boys weren't playing well, I cut ties from the football then and just focused on a sport that was up to me whether or not I was going to win.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, isn't it? It's one of those, isn't it? It's when you're relying on other people it's difficult. But as you moved into sort of training and doing MMA, how old were you when you turned pro?
24 or 25 whenever I turned pro.
Did you have I was just trying to look then. Do you have a lot of amateur fights before you made the decision to turn pro?
I either had 12 or 14. I can't remember exactly.
Because we've had obviously we've had various fighters on, and I think like Danny, obviously yourself as well, but like Paddy and Jack Shaw, Richard Shaw, all the different people we've had on over the 75 shows. A lot of them speak so like about the importance of that amateur record and those amateur fights building you as a fighter. Tell me a bit about that, Dan. Just why it's so important.
Yeah, I mean that's where you find out what you got, what you haven't got in terms of your actual, fighting heart, fighting spirit, as well as your technical adjustments that you may or may not need doing in particular areas. Yeah, that's where you forge your skill sets in each given area. If you've got a weakness in your game, you want to find it out in the amateurs, not in the pros, ideally. Because, I think it's been said before by other people that we've had on as guests that once you get your pro record, it's there to stay. The amateur one, you can kind of disregard to a point. You could have an amateur career where you have 10 and 10. It doesn't mean you can't come on to be an amazing, emphatic pro fighter and win a world title and create a legacy for yourself. I just think there's not enough young fighters getting what they need out of the amateur scene. I think that's just too keen, or it seems to be my experience anyway, regards the amateurs I have at my place. They just want to fight pro from the get-go. They get 3 or 4 fights under their belt and that's it. They want to go banging it out pro-wise. I think partly because I see other young lads having successes, say like Jordans and stuff that we have in our gym, and they're really young, they just turned 25 and they think that they can rush there just because they're 21, 22. What we've got to understand is Jordan had a background in martial arts similar to Decky beforehand. He actually had quite an extensive amateur career, but trying to hold back these youngsters sometimes, and it's a little bit of game. But Decky said he felt like he was unstoppable. He had this attitude about him that he was he just thought he was better than anyone else. I think some of these youngsters get too big for their boots too soon, and they want to bypass the amateurs way too quick.
But I mean, I was just your first professional fight, Decky, was against James Gallagher. Is that right? That's quite like obviously James has gone on to do very, very well for himself. Like that's quite a hard fight for your first pro fight, looking back on it. But after that initial loss, you went on a bit of a run. You had a few wins. You came up against one of Danny's fighters, Tom Mearns. Do you remember much about that fight?
Yeah, that fight was, I think that was about three months after I had a knee surgery. Okay. And Tom was just coming back himself off a bad injury. The fight itself, as I said, on the night, I was in a bad way after the decision. I thought I'd done enough to win. They thought they'd done enough to win. It could have been scored anyway. The fight was split down the middle. The first round at halfway through the second was all Tom. Halfway through the second and the third was with me. As I said a couple of minutes ago there though, after, obviously I don't like losing it, as I said. After the fight, whenever you get back down and sit down and realise that I didn't finish Tom, so that's my problem. So like I've left it to other people's opinion on who won the fight, so it doesn't matter what I think.
Yeah.
So like I messed up. Like
it's interesting. Danny, do you remember much of that fight? I vaguely remember.
Yeah, I mean, I remember how nervous we were, for Tom coming back after such a horrendous injury. But like Decky said, coming back after a nasty knee injury, I feel like they both couldn't perform to their top abilities of what they both know they're capable of, partly because of the horrendous injuries that they're coming back from, and I remember it being ever so close. I remember having doubts in my mind on whether Tom did enough or not, because again, it's down to opinions. Decky's exactly right. It doesn't matter what us cornermen and what the fighter thinks. It's down to the judges at the end of the day. It was a very, very close fight. I know that much. They both had their moments to shine in there. And again, I think they both just lacked the ability to put it away, and that's what it needed to be done if it weren't going to be left in the hands of judges. But it was that kind of fight that could have gone either way. I think had Tom lost it, it would have been just one of those things where you have to shrug off and try and move forward from. But it went in his favour at that one. But the last two fights that Tom's had have been reasonably close. They've gone against him. So it's just rough with smooth, and you just got to come back from it. And Decky's done great since. I mean, to get a draw, Kieran Lister's no easy feat for anyone. And although it never went either or way on terms of the judges, that is, it must tell you that you're right up there with the very best. I mean, he's had an incredible career, Kieran. So you're right up there. That's what I remember from it anyways. I just know it was bloody close.
It was. If whoever scored the second round, that was it.
Yeah, but I think that's right. It all depended on how you looked at one of the rounds in particular. And it just went in Tom's favour, like I say. But it wouldn't have surprised me if it went the other way. It's one of those type of fights.
But Decky, you haven't been finished since your pro debut. Obviously, you had a couple of losses to Tom and Steve Amiable, but apart from that, you've had a very successful run, really. And I mean, obviously, your most recent fights, you beat Adam Ventra at Cage Warriors 118 with a rear naked choke finish. And then, obviously, you had the draw with Kieran Lister at Cage Warriors 120. And like Danny says, like, two good fighters they are. So for me, you've got to be right up there. Are you going to be on the next trilogy?
Yeah.
Do you know who you have? Do you know who you're on?
Yeah.
See.
Just have to wait for it to be released.
Nah.
No trouble. I didn't have any inventory. Both said to someone that we were fighting, and then we got an awful earache over it. So
I bet.
my mouth shut.
I'm naughty. I am, mate. I'll always ask these fighters just in case, get exclusive. But no, I respect that, mate. But I mean, in terms of where you want to go in the future, like, what's your kind of aims as a fighter going forward now?
I think I'm within 2 to 3 fights of the Cage Warriors lightweight belt. I'm still sitting in a position that I think I could make featherweight handy enough.
Okay.
So we'll see what fights are offered when, and I'll be looking to try and get myself into the UFC very, very quickly. Like, because I as I said, I've been over in Team Alpha Male and I've trained with UFC fighters. They're no better than, like, if you watch them trilogy cards, they're no better than any of us, really. Like, obviously the top 10, top 15 are the elite level, but give us the time and the experience on that kind of stage, and we'll show that we're as good as any of them.
Yeah. I mean, me and you, Si, have said, haven't we, time and time again, and many other fighters that are in Cage Warriors, you're top 5 in Cage Warriors, or all of them would not be out of place on a UFC card. And so sometimes I don't like to see some of you top fighters face each other, say, more than once, particularly when you're jostling for positions for contendership for the title, where you're cutting each other's throats. I think sometimes I just would like to see a fighter get the title, maybe defend it just once or twice, and then move on to UFC. But I don't know. That's just my mind on it. I just want to see these, fantastic Irish, Scottish, Welsh, English fighters not to keep cutting each other's throats, fighting each other time and time again, and jump ship over to UFC a little quicker.
That's the hard part with Cage Warriors. They make the best fights. There's no padding your record or no messing about. Like, remember me and Tom fought, both of us had the identical record. My first fight in Cage Warriors, first fight back in Cage Warriors, I was offered Amiable something like 12-4 or something at the time. Like, you're trying to take the top boys out to get yourself to the top. So there's no messing about and no easy fights. Like, so we, as you said, we're all cutting each other's throat to try and get one step ahead. Like,
yeah, I bet. And we said this at the start of the show. for me, this is why I kind of lean towards MMA over boxing, because whether it's Cage Warriors, whether it's Bellator, whether it's UFC, the fighters who are the best in those divisions, on the whole, will fight each other. There's obviously you could pick out like a handful of fights which haven't happened in the UFC for whatever reason, but generally the best will fight the best, and that's what I love about it as a fan, as a watching it. And I do get what you mean though, Danny. Like, obviously, there's a wave, isn't there, at the moment of British and Irish fighters just waiting to go over to the UFC and really make a statement for British and Irish MMA. Like, there's you're talking like 10 to 15 fighters who are extremely capable of pushing into the rankings. But if they keep beating each other in Cage Warriors, does it slow down the progress of them then getting over to the UFC and making that statement? It's a weird one for sure. I as a fan though, mate, I just appreciate the good fights. I gotta be honest. But Decky, I wanted to ask you a little bit about like your training in terms of your training partners and your gym. Is there anyone that we should be looking out for, in maybe in the next year or two?
The progress has been slowed down a lot with the amateurs not getting able to fight.
Yeah.
I'd say we would have maybe 3 or 4 very, very good lads ready to sort of turn pro and try and start making a wave. But at the minute, they haven't fought now from before Christmas, before lockdown started, so it's a good maybe 20 months, 24 months, So it's going to be hard. We're just trying to get them back and try and get the amateurs active again. There is 2 lads in particular that I think can go all the way. I think one of them's 19 or 20 and the other lad is 21. But it's all well and good saying that. How long are these boys going to go without getting fights? Do we have to push them forward into the pros to try and get them a fight? And put the only place really throwing fights together at the minute is Cage Warriors, where you're throwing them into the lands. Then they're not going to get a hand-picked fight for them. Not that they should, but they're going to be put in against another prospect. So it's hard. It's hard at the minute to see what's happening for the amateurs.
Yeah, the amateur scene has been decimated, hasn't it, in Britain, probably around the world as well, but particularly for Britain and Ireland, I think. In COVID times, like, it's just been decimated. There's no other way to word it. Like, there's been no fights at all, which obviously, like you say, it slows the progress of those fighters, because as Danny was saying, 10 minutes ago or whatever it was, about the importance of those amateur fights and that amateur record. If it's a whole year, 18 months of having no fights, that's going to slow down anyone. Even the special amateurs who've gyms around the country have got big plans for. If they haven't been able to fight for a year, that's going to slow them down. There's no way around that.
Like, even I put on I've always wanted to run an MMA show in my hometown.
Okay.
I've fought twice in my hometown, so I have. But because I would have a big enough following, shows have came to my town for me, obviously, to be the main event. So whenever I went back to Cage Warriors, it sort of left a hole here that I said I'm going to run my own MMA show in the town. And with having the child and having a couple of months off after, I planned a show for the Paddy's weekend in March, and everything was going, trying to get all the boys on the show and maybe run 2 or 3 more last year. And the country got shut down, I think, on the Monday or Tuesday. My show was on the Saturday. It wasn't one hiccup the whole way through organising the show, and then that happened.
And then
so
COVID came around. Nightmare.
It's hard.
That's brutal, that, isn't it?
It's hard, and then there's other shows over here trying to run amateur shows and pass them off as like the elite program and stuff, but they're not elite. You can get elite level amateurs, but there's not too many elite level amateurs in MMA, because it's not usually whenever you get to that elite stage you turn pro.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a boxing thing where you can stay like you can make yourself an elite level amateur and compete around the world and make a living out of it. You're getting your experience to turn pro. So I think that the boys are just trying to make a quick penny off this, like, and get throwing pro fighters on the cards and not paying them just to get, to try and sell pay-per-views to try and get a show off the ground and then cancelling a fight week on them. So I think it's not right. Like,
No, not at all. Danny, you got anything to add to that, mate?
Yeah. Out of all the fights you've had, which was the one that you felt like was your shining performance? It might be a case that you feel that you're most well-rounded, everything was just on point, or it might have been it meant so much to you because you had to go through so much adversity within the performance to pull off a win, or it might not even be the one that you had a win with. What would you say was your most emphatic performance today?
I think there's only been glimpses. As a pro, nothing stands out at all.
Right.
I'm sort of scratching the surface. There's been wee glimpses, and that's usually where I've got the finishes.
Yeah.
But I sort of think my last amateur fight, or last semi-pro fight, whatever you want to call it, was a 4-man tournament.
Right.
And that's really where everything came together perfect against 2 tough opponents, where I was able to knock out a striker in the first side of the tournament and then submit a grappler in the second part of the tournament.
Right. Yeah.
That was sort of the right happy days, you can do this.
Yeah.
Then I'd say that would be the main one as an amateur, and then maybe the comeback fight after the loss to James. That would be the one where he come through adversity, because I had a bad injury fighting James. I shattered a couple of bones in my hand.
Right.
So within a couple of seconds of the fight, and then just one thing led to another. James capitalised and then got a finish, got a lovely choke. The following fight, I broke the same bone, well, one of the bones, but just not as bad, and was able to come through on Cage Warriors against Thomas Taugeman, where I think I was taken over to lose, and I was able to come over that injury after redoing it, and then get the win and pick up a win on Cage Warriors.
Right. Yeah.
I'd say my first fight back in Cage Warriors, that would be the main one.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I like it a lot, mate. Decky, you are most definitely welcome back, mate, anytime. And if you want to come back on, just before your fight and have a chat, either you can come on to this with me and Danny and have a chat about it, or if you want to just like and do one with you and we can clip it in. But it'd be good to get a chat to you, like in the build up to your fight or something like that. But it's been superb to have you, mate. Really enjoyed it. Me and Danny are going to talk the numerous MMA cards from the last couple of days. But appreciate your time, mate. It's been a good conversation, good laugh. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me on, boys. Thank you.
Yeah, good talking to you, Decky. And good luck for your fight. Yeah, cheers.
Probably see you then. Bye.
Yeah.
Cheers, mate. So yeah, Decky there joined us. Lovely. Really enjoyed that, mate. There was another good chat with another top guest. Do enjoy having all these different fighters and coaches. And we'll have another one on next week, no doubt. But we got lots and lots to talk about, and I don't want to spend another 3 hours talking about it. So we're going to fly through some stuff. We had Friday, Bellator 258 on the iPlayer. So me and you have kind of split this between the two of us because there was so much to watch. Michael Venom Page, mate, versus Derek Anderson was an interesting one. Didn't last long, and Michael Venom Page impressive.
Yeah. Michael can almost be frustrating to watch because it's like one person fighting in there. The other person's just almost like he might as well not be in there other than to be a hitting post. No one can seem to get a touch on him apart from that one time, obviously, with Lima. He's just really mastering that range to such a degree that it's really just him choosing to hit at him when he wants to and making the other guy miss and just look frustrated. You could see Derek was trying to control his frustration, but he absolutely wasn't. He was getting frustrated, and when he got kicked, I mean, there's no wonder why he got kicked and so badly injured to the face, because he turned away. And he did this twice. He turned away once and received the kick across the nose. And then he turned away again and got punched into the side of the jaw. If you're going to be doing anything against someone that's so linearly strong, with the type of punching and the kicking prowess of Page, you don't want to be turning the side of your face to him. It's just not a good idea. You turn your face, you're going to get hit on the jaw. You turn your face, you're going to get kicked to the front of the face, which is what happened with his nose. Yeah, Page just looked utterly dominant. I'd love to see Michael Page go to UFC to see what happens.
Yeah, he needs to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, because he's, 34 now? Something like that. Yeah, I would like to see that.
He's ranked number 2 as well in the welterweight division for Bellator, where they got their rankings out now. So that's going to be interesting. Also ranked number 2, but in a different division, is Patricky Pitbull, and he fought Peter Queally, who is one of Conor McGregor's main training partners. Peter Queally is 36. He's got a record of 12-5-1 versus Pitbull's record of 23-9, a year younger. But it was a really, it was in the lightweight division. So you've got Patricky Pitbull is ranked 2 in the division, and Queally's not ranked. And I think I've talked about the Pitbull brothers. I'm not a massive fan of them. Obviously, you've got the one who's champion, but it is what it is. Pitbull started quite well. He was getting his striking off quite clean, but eventually Queally kind of took over with some good striking. Pitbull tried to take him down at some point, and it went against him. Queally sort of turned it over, and he opened him up with some elbows. Pitbull's low kicks look good as well, though, and he did a couple of times take Peter Queally's feet from underneath him, but the end of the fight came where Pitbull takes him down, and Pitbull's on top of him, and Peter Queally basically sort of holds his head and opens him up with elbows from the bottom, and he had already opened him up at that point. But Peter Queally is a bald guy. For anyone who doesn't know, he's a bald guy, similar looking to Danny, but he's got a big, bushy beard. He's got blood all over his head, all over his face, all over his chest. He's covered in blood. None of it is his. So whilst technically in the fight, Pitbull did pretty well, he did all right, shall we say. It was quite a close fight in terms of the back and forth. But when Peter Queally did the damage, he did the damage well. And there was a lot of blood, a lot of things. I think it was just before the end of the second round, I think it was. He opens him up, and then going into the next round, Pitbull takes him down, but he opens him up with those elbows, so even more from the bottom. A lot of blood, big gash. And then he calls out his brother on the microphone straight after the fight and says, "No excuses anymore, just get it done. You've seen what I've just done to your brother. It's time to put that fight on." So I think I'd be very surprised if they don't take advantage of that. Like, we talk about people doing like good mic work and stuff. Like, when you're covered in someone else's blood, if you're able to call out their brother, I think that's a good clip for Bellator to use in their promotional material for me anyway. But yeah, Peter Queally with maybe a shock. I don't know. Well, he's not ranked. And Patricky Pitbull is ranked 2, and it was a doctor stoppage technically, but is what it is. He opened him up big, and it was stopped between the rounds, and Anthony Rumble Johnson fought last night against Jose Augusto. 2
and
very
you know what?
Experienced fighters.
Yeah, it almost didn't look like he'd ever been out of the cage for the length of time that he has. He looked in good shape. He was sharp, making good choices. Wasn't even looking like he was diminishing in terms of his cardio, which we so often see. We see him come out being so explosive in the past, and then sort of like fading massively in later rounds. But he looked sharp throughout, looked composed, looked experienced, and did ever so well. There were times when it didn't go his own way. He was grounded, with Gusto on top of him. It wasn't looking too nice for him at one point, but
Yeah.
he survived that situation, gets back to feet. Now Gusto, it looks like he's broke his hand in some way. He scuffed the
Okay.
top of his head, really was holding his hand, and he landed another punch with his right hand and then held it, turned away, almost looked like he was for a split second going to quit the fight. But he turned and faced Johnson, started doing great combinations using his lead jab and round kick off the rear side, and was trying to get creative and doing really, really well. And like I say, he had that moment with Johnson where he got him on the ground. It looked like he was going to win. Started trying to sink in a rear naked choke. Johnson wasn't really doing the right things to defend it, but Augusto lost his position, possibly due to having that bad hand. But going into the other round, Johnson, again, really composed, picking his shots real, trying to be efficient, ended up landing a really devastating right cross and left it to no question. Augusto was done. Knocked him Sparko on his back. What a return. Could be seeing a legit return from Johnson. I was really dubious, to be honest, on what kind of condition he was going to come in with, but looked good, looked really good.
It's, for me, with Anthony Rumble Johnson, I really believe that it's the issues that he was having is a psychological one more than a physical one. Like, I don't think anyone doubted no one doubts his ability or his talents. He couldn't seem to get his head right in terms of fighting. When those big fights came around, he just wasn't quite able to. I don't know, maybe whether it's get his head straight or control his nerve. I don't know what it was, but there was just something which meant he wasn't able to quite, perhaps show what he could do. I suppose would be the best, but hopefully maybe he can, and maybe he's gonna get. He's into the semi-finals of the Bellator light heavyweight Grand Prix now, so he's really in with a shout. The last 4, so be interesting. The main event was I only saw a little bit of this, so I sort of saw like clips of the end of it. It was Sergio Pettis versus the champion Juan Achuleta, Bellator Bantamweight Championship. Sergio Pettis won a 5-round fight by unanimous decision. From what I saw, Sergio Pettis did a very good job technically. Really did some good low kicks, a couple of high kicks I saw, and he just looked sharp. Looked the better, technically better fighter from what I saw. But I couldn't give a detailed breakdown of it because I haven't watched it all. But what I did see, Sergio Pettis looked impressive, mate. I'd say.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because we criticised Bellator maybe for some of their people they were pushing, and then all of a sudden now they've got people like Corey Anderson, they've got Rumble Johnson, they've got Brett Johns making his debut in a while, they've got Sergio Pettis has just taken a championship. These guys, whilst they're experienced, they're not over the hill. They're more than capable of taking Bellator and carrying these divisions and putting on taking on legitimate challengers rather than having like a fighter which is like 44 and he's very, very clearly just there for the money or whatever it is. It's frustrating, isn't it? I apologise if you can hear drilling. That's my neighbour. There's nothing I can do with that, I'm afraid.
Bang on the wall.
Tell me what you think about the UFC, mate. Last night.
UFC good, but just before we go to that, if you don't mind me just saying about, I only watched one fight on PFL. Now PFL's, I think that's going to start gaining attention really, really fast. So Bellator needs to continue to get their act together, otherwise they're going to lose even more viewing and attention to PFL. The one that I watched was Fabricio Verdun, just partly really because he's been a big part of the UFC over the course of history and time. Verdun now is 43 years old, perhaps cracking on in years a little bit these days, but he was up against a massive guy, 6'8", Renan Ferreira, another Brazilian, another black belt. Verdun looked really good at the beginning. Renan Ferreira come out with a crazy jumping knee, but got himself taken down very, very quickly with a single leg. I didn't think he was actually going to get him down because he had the single leg swinging him around, and I thought the height and the length of the legs and base that Renan had would stop him from being taken down. But Verdun got him down, was looking very, very impressive, controlling issues. But Ferreira, being that he's so big and rangy, ended up flipping over from half guard. He ended up flipping Verdun over. But consequently, as he flipped him over, Verdun got him in a triangle. And it was looking like it was done. Started looking like he was trying to noose it in and tighten it up. And Ferreira was just trying to strike his way out of it. Now, the triangle come off momentarily. Then he was back in it again. But then when he released it a second time, I think Verdun was just getting affected by all the punches that he was hitting from inside that triangle. Once he let go of it, he started looking like he was out, and all from just a few hammer fists. So I don't know where Verdun goes from here. I don't know whether he's contracted with PFL for a string of fights or not. But don't know. Looked good until it went wrong. But when it went wrong very, very quickly for him.
Yeah. I'm muted. No, I'm back. Sorry, I muted my microphone because of the neighbours drilling, so I was just checking. But yeah, it sounds like that PFL is really worth a watch. I just haven't had the time to do it, so I'm going to have to try and find the time because it looks fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It was good.
Really interested to seeing it going. I want to talk about these UFC fights just quickly.
Sure.
A lot of decisions, but there was a couple of interesting performances and knockouts. Just overall, I thought Gregor Gillespie was phenomenal. And I've got to be honest, I want to see Cowboy Cerrone retire, but we'll get to that fight by fight.
Sure.
I just don't want him to get hurt, mate. I really don't.
Absolutely.
And when you think of the damage he's taken just in his last 2 or 3 fights,
I mean, you can take that into account. That you got to take the whole fight career into account. You know, he's been in wars time again, and look, he's done such amazing things for the sport. He's so highly respected, and yes, on his given day, he's up there with some decent level guys, but he's never going to get into contendership for a title anymore. He's nothing more than becoming a gatekeeper, and I just don't like to see that. There's just no point. This guy's financially sound. It's just not going to do his health any good. It's not going to improve his legacy anymore by staying in longer than he should. He should definitely get out. That's nothing to take away from Alex Morono. He's a fantastic fighter himself. But I think a Cerrone of earlier youthful years would have been dealing with the Moronos of the world. But Morono's been doing great in his last performances. He did what he had to do and did what was perhaps to be expected of him.
It's a good scalp, isn't it?
Yeah, it left him in a difficult position, really, because if he was to lose to Cerrone, it's really going to damage his career. But to beat Cerrone, although it's a big name to have on your record, in the fighter world with other people watching it, they ain't going to take too much from it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a weird one, I suppose, isn't it? It's, but I think, I don't know. It was hard to watch, mate, to be honest. But let's go quickly through the card. So the first fight was it Kyle DeCasse? Kyle DeCasse versus Phil Hawes, wasn't it? Was that the first one?
I think that was the first one. That was a good fight, fantastic fight. Both of them impressed me at times in that. DeCasse had a really good second round. It looked like he really had the measure of Phil Hawes. I thought, that was the way it was going to stay. But Phil Hawes switched it up in that third round and was really dominating things. Had great controlling situations on the ground. Was looking really game on the feet. But like I say, he had some tricky situation with DeCasse in that second round. DeCasse was really loose with his striking. Almost looked like Phil Hawes was becoming a little bit gassed. It looked like he was done, but he come out from that next round and switched things up on DeCasse and looked really, really good, really, really strong. I think both of them are going to make increased improvements from that performance. I feel like they haven't reached their peak by any stretch yet regards their evolution in their personal careers. But that certainly did something for both of them in terms of improving themselves. But Phil Hawes, he got the win along with that improvement. And it's onwards and upwards for him.
100%, mate. I thought it was a good fight. Good fight to open up that main cards. Really enjoyed both guys. I thought did very well. Then we had Gregor Gillespie ranked 14, versus number 12 ranked Diego Ferreira, with Gillespie picking up the victory via TKO strikes about 4 minutes 50. There was actually 9 seconds left of the second round. This was fascinating to watch, this fight, mate. It really was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Gillespie's, I mean, he was exhausted at the end of that first round. He
looked done, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He was trying ever so hard to get Ferreira down. But he did get him down, but he wasn't left alone when he got down there. He was always under pressure with the strikes. When he got it on the ground, he was under pressure from the submissions in that first round. But he didn't stop doing what we know he does well, which is to continue to shoot and wrestle. I don't know where he got the second win from or where he got the energy from, but he just ended up breaking Ferreira. Just broke him down, ended up getting him down, trying submissions of his own, really controlled matters on the ground. And Ferreira just began to fade. The difference between them both was when Ferreira began to fade, it led to him losing. He was just absolutely done. Didn't recover from it. I don't know what to take from that from Diego. Was it mentally that he got ground down? Was it a physical thing? I'm really not sure because he looked so good in the early rounds. Really did. I thought it was all for him to win. He was just looking so in control. But fair play to Gillespie for grinding it out. Done ever so well when he looked so done in that first round. Really, really impressed me, to be honest. That spirit to carry on and push so hard, and he looked absolutely elated, didn't he? He just shouted out.
You don't see many fighters look that gassed and get a second win to that extent, do you? Like normally, when a fighter looks as gassed as he did, he just looked really tired.
Yeah, he was stumbling, wasn't he? Back to his corner. Yeah, I don't think he was rocked in. I know he took some shots in that first round, but I don't think it was the fact that he was rocked that he staggered. I think he was literally just gasping for oxygen. But he must be in fantastic shape. I mean, you could expect an athlete that keeps on shooting in for a 5-minute duration, constantly trying to take someone down that can not only strike well but throw submissions at you. I'm not surprised he was gassed and exhausted, because doing the takedown range is the most tiring range. It really, really is, especially when it ain't easy getting them there, and then trying to hold them down on top of the fact. But it was full of scrambles, wasn't it? Even that first round, Gillespie was on top, Ferreira was on top. There was all over the place. It really was. It was a really good fight to watch. It really was. I loved it, and I'm really happy for Gillespie because it was going to go to the man that was wanting it the most and was going to try hardest the most, and it was Gillespie this time round.
Yeah, Gillespie just looked I don't even know if you would say he wanted it more. He just looked physically like his body wanted it more. I don't know how better to describe it, to be honest.
It was a good turnaround. It really was.
100%. So, next up was Maurice Green versus Marcos Rogério de Lima.
Yeah. Green just... he's been found out on the ground if he hadn't been before. Just lacking in ability to stop a takedown and to recover back to his feet in the right way. He just was doing all the wrong things. He's got all these long limbs. The commentary constantly picked up on it. He was not framing away. He was not digging under pummels. He wasn't bringing his shin across. Being at that sort of height, you should have the advantage in many ways, in many aspects, being on the ground on your back to be able to create space to scramble back up. He was just not doing it. He was allowing De Lima to constantly get body to body weight distribution on him, and smother inside the closed guard as well. He's got to look seriously at his game and put those wrongs right very, very quickly, because other fighters will see this and they'll keep trying to do the same thing of what they saw De Lima do. It was a good performance from De Lima, though. You can't take anything away from him. I've never seen him do so many takedowns as he was doing. I think he found it easy down on the ground with him.
So though, isn't it?
Yeah, and he went to where it was easy. I even think he could have had it out on the feet as well if he truly wanted to. Really good performance from him, but partly due to the poor performance from Green. It just showed that he's very, very much so lacking. I really don't know. I actually not looked into too heavily on what his training camp is or anything like that. but there's definitely some things missing in his game, and you cannot expect to have any kind of success in UFC lacking the way we saw him do last night. So, yeah, he's got to go back to the drawing board somewhat.
Indeed. So next up was Neil Magny, ranked 9 versus Jeff Neal, ranked 10. I haven't seen this one. I saw the end.
You've
the last round.
got to watch it. It's a fantastic performance from both of them. Jeff Neal come out very, very aggressive with his hands, was lumping up Neil Magny. But Neil Magny, with his really long range and tall frame, was never an easy customer because he's effective outside and he's also really effective with his wrestling, which Jeff Neal suffered with. The only time Jeff Neal had his successes was when he was in that close striking range, but of course he was quickly smothered by Magny. So it was a case of either being picked apart from the outside or being clinched and grapple screwed in the clinch. So it began to wear on Jeff Neal, and we see this pattern with Magny. He seems to do the same with everybody he fights. He forces them into this certain pattern of defeat. But as much as Jeff Neal got defeated, I was impressed with his game. He performed extremely, extremely well and made a relatively close fight in terms of you knew he could have any one of those punches could have turned the fight around at any time. But you cannot take anything away from Magny. Magny played long. He played a high-paced fight. He was good in the clinch. He'd done ever so well. It was not a perfect performance by any stretch, but I think it's hard to have a perfect performance against someone like Jeff Neal, but also rate and respect as a fighter as well. But Neil Magny looked fantastic. He did overall. A really, really good decision win. Great work ethic. Difficult customer for anyone, I believe.
Yeah, Neil Magny, he's most definitely got skills, mate. There's no doubt about that. And I feel like the last year or two, he's really stepped up his game.
Yeah.
From what I saw and from what you just said, it seems like he's taken that to the next level, and he's got to keep doing it. He's got to keep working at it. He's got to keep showing people that he's more than just a one-dimensional fighter. Basically, I think is.
No, yeah, he's good. Like I say, he's just got that awkward body combination.
It's very difficult to get hold of, isn't he? And control.
Yeah. But he had his loss last time around, and now he's had this great comeback win against another great fighter. Hopefully, this gets him back on track and getting back into a respectful position to try and get to be a contender. It could happen for him.
Got the ability, haven't he? And,
yeah.
It's just a case of whether he can get it done. Next up was Alex Moreno versus Donald Cerrone, which we mentioned, with Moreno picking up the TKO strikes victory. Just add anything you want to add to what we've already said.
Really, yeah. The thing I wanted to add was, it sounded earlier like Cerrone was not showing anything of his former self. He certainly was. He landed a couple of good leg kicks and a couple of good body kicks that actually looked like it hurt Moreno. I just think that he should have been perhaps getting on that a little bit more. I think sometimes when you're getting of older, older maturity in the fight game and having as many tough fights as he has, I think sometimes you're not aware of, what's working really well and what ain't, and making the adjustments on the job. Because, like I say, he did have some successes there, but didn't pick enough on those points to try and turn and steer it into a different direction. Moreno rocked Cerrone and just stayed on him. Moreno's got good cardio. It's something I've noticed about him. He likes to fight a gritty, messy paced fight. He likes to just keep pushing and driving. And in the first round, Cerrone don't like that. Cerrone takes time. He normally needs a round. Yeah, he does. And he just was not given the space to do so. So in many ways, Moreno was kind of a bit of a nightmare opponent for him. And even more so given the fact that he's in his twilight years. And like we said before, being twilight years, perhaps he should be thinking about hanging those gloves up. I think maybe he's 2 fights in too far for my liking for what's been an amazing career. I just hope he steps aside now and allows these young bloods to just step through. He's too good to be a gatekeeper. He's done too many good things. He's highly respected, really is, and financially absolutely sound, and seems to be an absolutely fantastic guy. Put those gloves up, buddy, man, and just enjoy it and bask in the respect that's going to be there for you forever. That's all I can say to him.
100%, mate. So our guest last week, James Doolan, I just noticed this put up a Facebook post saying, how many of the top 10 UFC welterweights would you pick MVP to beat? So I'm going to put that question to you, which James Doolan's just put on. So I'm going to list them off. You got, we'll start with the lowest. So you got Vincent Luque. So would you take MVP versus Luque?
But this is the thing, see. I the reason why I want MVP to be in UFC is because I don't think he's fighting the really highest caliber of people in the world at that weight division. I think anyone in that top 15 could really have the potential to beat MVP. With no disrespect for MVP, I've had him train at my gym. The guy's legit, an incredible striker. But come on, that Luca, he's good both on the ground and a fantastic striker. I think he's got the capabilities to beat MVP, but this is all just opinions until it happens.
Michael Chiesa.
I mean, so he beat Magny, didn't he? The last time round, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Oh man, it's just another one that I think's got the capability to beat him. I don't know. It's so hard to say because
next, Jorge Masvidal.
I think Masvidal will lose. I don't think he's got the style to beat MVP.
Okay, next, Stephen Thompson.
Oh, now
That's
that
a
would
now
probably that would be the most interesting striking bout out of anyone in that weight division. I want to see that out of pure curiosity.
Yeah.
But I'd go MVP. I think MVP would win that one.
Okay, Leon Edwards.
Oh, Leon Edwards, too well rounded.
Gilbert Burns.
MVP would win.
Colby Covington.
Oh, I think Colby Covington would wear him down with the wrestling and the fact that he can keep walking forward with his hands. I mean, but MVP could knock any one of these out on the way forward. That's the thing. But I think some of these guys could get a hold of him. And if they get a hold of him, I think they will grind him down. He's just not fought that caliber wrestler that can also strike enough to get in close. I think someone like Colby Covington could do that. Leon Edwards could do that.
Kamaru Usman.
Usman. This guy has just been incredible lately, hasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, it's been incredible.
And then back to the UFC card from last night. I just thought that was quite interesting because we had just been talking about it.
Yeah.
We had the main event, which was the strawweight. Rank 6, Marina Rodriguez defeated rank 9, Michelle Waterson by unanimous decision. What did you make of this one, my friend?
Yeah. Now, this one, I had terrible trouble with my internet before we come on. You know, when I said, look, I'm just going to come on. So I only saw bits of it. It was just really jumpy for me. It was a bit annoying. A lot of what I was getting the impression of was Waterman was obviously, stockier, trying to be effective, coming in close, and you had Rodriguez trying to keep it long and keeping it rangy. But it was ever so hard for me to get a perspective on this fight with the way it was. I was just having a nightmare time.
Yeah, 100%. I saw most of it. Looked pretty interesting fight, mate. I didn't quite understand why this was the main event, but it was a bit of a weird card. They announced it quite late on, so
yeah,
it was a bit weird all round. But I think Michelle Waterson, like, she's a decent fighter. I feel like she's almost that gatekeeper fighter in that strawweight division. Like, right. I don't feel like she's quite up to. And I don't mean any disrespect to this by any means. I don't think she's quite up to the kind of main, the title contention. But she's a good fighter. So she's got good, decent wrestling, decent striking, but she's just not quite up to that level for me. This was what I was happy to see is that this female fight was 5 rounds, because they do sometimes, even when they main event, give them 3 rounds. And I was glad to see that.
Sure.
I thought Rodriguez did very, very well though. I had let me just check my notes. But I had Rodriguez winning round 1. Rodriguez winning round 2. Rodriguez winning round 3. Waterson winning round 4, and Waterson winning round 5. Because she did rally quite well.
Yeah, she
towards
did.
the
She,
end.
she had that grappling bit where she was landing all the elbows and stuff.
Yes.
I mean, you got to wonder whether she could have maybe got it put away at that point, but yeah, she didn't, unfortunately for her. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's difficult. But I thought it was an enjoyable fight, enjoyable card, mate. And in some ways, it's a bit frustrating that there was so much on this weekend because I feel like I haven't really been able to take it in as much as I would have liked. Like, I thought the UFC card was really good, but I thought the Bellator card on Friday was excellent. I thought the boxing was really, really good. I thought, I want to watch the Pro Fight League. I just don't have the time to watch it. They need to space these bloody shows out, is what they do. Like, a couple of weeks. UFC and Bellator need to get together and like say, we'll run this week, you run next week. It's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
mind.
mind. It's all part of the challenge. But what I've done, I've gone up my parents at the weekend. They live in Somerset, so they're like 140 mile away. And I come back today on top of trying to fit all those things in. So I was trying to watch a bit before I left, watch a bit when I come home, and then when I come home, I was left that last fight to watch, and my internet was just in and out, and it was stop and start. It was so annoying. And you can't get a perspective on a fight though, can you? When it's stop and start, you can't get a sense of who edged that round. It's so annoying.
It is frustrating. Next week though, mate, is the big one for you.
Yes, yeah.
Your man Crush is main eventing for the lightweight title.
Yeah, it's going to be
Michael
good.
Chandler versus Charles Oliveira. Tony Ferguson versus Beneil Dariush. We got Edmund Shabazian and Jack Hermanson. And Chikadian's fighting. Shane Burgos, Edson Barboza. What a card this is.
I mean, Edson Barboza, he's been looking fantastic. Because he's gone down to featherweight and been looking extremely good there. I'm kind of really keen on seeing how he'll do against Burgos.
100%, mate. Right. Shevchenko's sister's on the prelims next week as well, which I always enjoy watching her and see what comes.
She's made improvements, hasn't she? She's been looking really good lately.
I was just having a quick look to see if there was any British fighters on that on the card. I can't see any. Any news on Modestas fighting, mate?
I believe he's signed for something, but to be honest now, I think he's training elsewhere now. Well, he's always trained elsewhere anyway, but I've not had anything to do with his training prep for this fight, so I'm a little bit out of the loop on that one now. He's made some amendments and changes to his training. I'm hoping that puts some wrongs right for some better performances in the future. So I wish him all the best for that. But he's moving on with his journey.
It's one of those, mate, isn't it? It's fighters are gonna chop and change, and they're gonna do what feels right on their journey as they try and get to where they want to be, and particularly if you have a couple of losses, you're going to change things up a little bit. Mason Jones announced he's fighting Alan Patrick on.
Alan Patrick, I can't think of him off the top of my head.
It's the 5th of June, that is.
Alan Patrick, I can't think of him off the top of my head.
Brazilian. His nickname is the Nougat, apparently. He is 15-3. He's on a two loss streak at the moment.
Right. So they might be feeding him someone that might be more accepted, because that last fight he had was tough as hell.
Yeah, it was brutal, wasn't it? Yeah. So this guy in the UFC has fought. Let's have a quick look. He's fought Makadesi. He's fought Stevie Ray. He's fought Hasdozovic. He's fought Scott Holtzman. He was scheduled to fight Mark Casey. He's been around a while, this guy. He fought Bobby Green on UFC Fight Night in.
Maybe I do remember.
He had a bout against Rodrigo Vargas. Which was
he's been largely inactive. That's why he's in my mind.
4 fights called off in the last couple of years. His last fight was in 2020 against Bobby Green, which he lost via decision. So it'll be interesting. It's going to still be a tough task for Mason Jones, but
Yeah, my money's on Mason for that, man. He's going to make an impression. I have no doubt about that. He's a very rare breed.
He just came up against someone who was almost like a similar breed to him, I think, in his debut.
The guy was athletically absolutely incredible as well.
Yeah, they
really
just battered each other, didn't they, for like round after round after round after
yeah,
round. It was incredible. Be interesting what they do with Paddy Pimblett, mate, as well. There's a couple of guys already calling Paddy Pimblett out. Kutalade has already said he wants to fight. Again, similar to Mason, even if he goes in and loses his first fight, no doubt that he's going to do something special in there. But just because he's all-round game,
and Paddy's confidence and the way he carries himself, is going to rub people up the wrong way in that division. So he ain't going to be short of offerings for opponents for sure.
No, 100%, mate. Right, Danny, that's us for this week. Again, another top guest, another interesting show.
Yes.
We've flown through the results, but I think it's a lot to talk about, and we're trying to keep the shows to around an hour and a half, so we don't bore the people. But as always, mate, it is an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And
likewise, Si.
We'll be back next week for another guest, another show, and we'll have UFC 262 to talk about next week, so you can have a Michael Chandler loving. But I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe Michael Chandler will be put in his place, and Oliveira will continue his reign of terror.
Yep. Both have looked good, and I can't wait to see them collide. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be a banger, mate. Defending champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
You're listening to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/AceCast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation.